Joining us now is Corey Lewandowski. He was the campaign architect for this whole thing back in 15-16. He's the guy that engineered the greatest nomination upset in the history of the world with Donald Trump. He was a campaign manager. He's also author of 2 New York Times bestsellers. From Lowell, Massachusetts, he's a best-selling author 2 times over. Who would have thunk it? And his books are great. You got to read them. Let Trump Be Trump. If you haven't read that, wow, man, buy it. Just go on my website. It's right there. Can order from Amazon. We don't get anything out of it. I just want you to read the book. It's great. Also, Trump's Enemies, must read. He's got an interview with the president in there that's the best interview that's ever been done since he's been in office. So you want to buy that too. Trump's Enemies, right on my website. Easiest way to do it. And he's joining me now back from Orlando. Corey Lewandowski, thanks for being with us, Corey.
John, it's great to be back with you. And I will tell you, I didn't have any weather traffic issues because I was on Air Force One. So we made it in and out at no trouble. I'm sorry for your travel troubles. Unfortunately, I didn't have those problems.
I know. Well, you know what? Not all of us are right next to the seat of power like Corey Lewandowski that gets to travel on Air Force One down and back. So that was fabulous. We did those of us plebes that having to fly regular commercial air. We had some issues, but hey, everything was worth it. Corey, I got to tell you, man, I was reminiscing something. Of course, I knew you guys were going to win from the day you announced, but the day, and you remember this, the day that I was absolutely convinced of it was a Friday in the 3rd week in August, and we went to a rally in Mobile, Alabama, at Mobile Stadium, which, you know, nothing goes on in there except high school football games. I mean, the place is completely dead. And so you go to a rally in Mobile, Alabama on Friday football night in Alabama, high school football, big day. You got 15,000 people. People were lining up a day early. This was in August of 2015. Remember that? And you guys came in and you did the flyover. Remember that?
John, I remember it so well. The announcement kickoff of 2 days ago, it was very similar to that in feel. And what I mean by that is the people outside the arena who couldn't get into the football stadium in Alabama or couldn't get into the center in Orlando they drove from literally California and around the country just to be at the same location as the president was going to be at. Even if they weren't going to see him personally, they watch him on the screens because they support this president for what he's done for our country. It was so electric down there in Orlando. And there were so many great people. John, the people who were with us, 4 years ago, and there weren't many when he came down that golden escalator, but over the years, he has convinced these people because of what his actions have been, the promises he's kept, to come and be part of the Trump-Pence team. And look, I saw Pastor Darrell Scott there, who's been great with us, and Jerry Falwell and Paula White, and so many people who joined the Trump team early, like you, John, and were there for the historic event. But more importantly, I saw all those people who made truly what I think was a pilgrimage to come and be there on a historic day to see Donald Trump announce his reelection campaign, to tell their children and their grandchildren that they were there in Orlando, what their experience was, sitting out in the pouring rain, you remember, John, for an hour or so, just torrential downpours. Nobody left. I saw Marcus Luttrell, the American war hero. He was there in the rain, standing outside, waiting to get in. There were just so many people. I was glad that I had the privilege to be part of that one because there's so few people who were part of the first one and this one, and it was great to be there. And I thought the president's speech was amazing, and I have never heard an arena so loud as when the president said, "Is it make America great again or keep America great?" And I think the American people have spoken on that one, John.
I think so. Keep America great, no doubt. But what an electric feel for that. And I was so glad that I was there. And just seeing it, we did Radio Row outside, as you know, Corey, outside of the arena on Tuesday mornings. I was there at like 5 a.m. in the dark. And there were people lined up already. And some of the fans that we talked to, people would go out to go to the bathroom and stop by. You're right. I mean, we talked to somebody that drove from Milwaukee, Minnesota, Texas, Georgia. I mean, people had just come from all over the place. And Orlando's not an easy place to get to. And just the enthusiasm. And, you said too, in the rain, nobody took off, nobody left, nobody complained. They were playing music, they were excited. And, I just got to tell you, you juxtapose that rally, what we saw, what you experienced on Tuesday night, and the electricity there and the enthusiasm, and you compare that to one of these Joe Biden events, and you say to yourself, there is no way, I don't care what these fake polls are saying, there is no way we're going to lose to this guy.
John, if Joe Biden can put 100 people in a room, he's thinking that he hit it out of the park, right? And the reason that the networks cut away from Donald Trump wasn't because the crowd was chanting CNN sucks. It's because they don't want to give him the same opportunity they've given every other Democratic candidate, which is to lay out his vision for America. Look, sleepy Joe Biden, you couldn't pay people to fill that stadium for Joe Biden. It couldn't happen. If you said, hey, we'll give you all $100 to come, he has the same problems Hillary Clinton has, which is they are tied to the Obama administration, which is an administration of failed policies. Joe Biden has been in public service for 50 years, and he says the government hasn't worked for us. Well, he is the problem. He's not the solution. You mark my words, John. I'll predict it right here, and I'm pretty good at this stuff, okay? Joe Biden is not going to be the Democratic nominee. He's dropping like a rock everywhere. The progressive can't stand him. He's boring as hell. There's no way this guy's going to stand up and be able to take on Donald John Trump in a presidential debate. The Democrats are going to throw him to the curb, and they're going to put a socialist up, and the 2020 election is going to be socialism versus capitalism. I like our odds on that every time.
I like it too, and I've been saying for some time he isn't going to be the nominee. If you had to predict now, who do you think is going to be the Democratic nominee, Corey Lewandowski?
I'm still taking Bernie Sanders, and I know we've got a long way to go, but he's got a proven core group of supporters. He has fundraising prowess. He's crazy left-wing lunatic, which is exactly what the Democrats want. They want the individual who literally honeymooned in Russia. Okay, they want the individual who believes that socialism is the solution and that, the way that the people are governed in Venezuela and Cuba is the right way to go. That's what the Democrats want. That's what AOC and her party wants. And because of that, I think Bernie Sanders is going to be their nominee.
Well, I'd say the other thing, they're not going to be able to steal it from him the way they did in 2016. I don't know if Bernie's going to be aggressive and go after Biden, but if he gets to that Milwaukee convention and he's in the hunt, they're not going to be able to rip him off the way they did in 2016. And, I was there right in the middle of it, and I remember the Bernie protesters outside. There were thousands of them upset by the way that had gone down. And I was also at an event in Florida, but you're bringing back memories, where Debbie Wasserman Schultz went to address, I guess we were in Philadelphia, and I had, of course, press credentials for that. So I went to the Florida meeting, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz came in to talk to her Florida delegation, and they booed her off the stage in her own Florida caucus. So it's going to be very, very interesting. Corey, I want to get some other topics. Both of us predicting Bernie is going to be the nominee. That's a dynamic duo right there. Let's get to Hope Hicks yesterday. She worked for the campaign, reported to you directly for a long period of time as the communications director for the campaign, then went to the White House. They corralled her in, the Democrats did, to testify, but she goes yesterday refusing to answer questions. Now the Democrats, Jerry Nadler, all in a tizzy over it. Why did Hope Hicks have to answer these questions? Hasn't she already gone through this with them twice? What is remaining for her?
Well, it's a great question, and the question is, what is the committee hoping to find out? What information do they not have, or do they believe they don't have, that she would have access to? It's widely reported now that she spoke to the Mueller investigators with the counsel's advice from the White House. So she went and had a long conversation with Bob Mueller, or multiple conversations. Congress has access to all of those transcripts from her Mueller time, so they can go and look at what she said there. What information do they want to continue to press upon? Because the Mueller investigation, which is now closed, showed no obstruction, no collusion. And what that means is there's no crime there. So bringing Hope Hicks to Congress now to ask her a series of questions, which she has either already answered to the Mueller investigators. I don't know what these congressmen think they're going to ascertain from having Hope answer questions when 12 angry Democratic attorneys and 500 FBI agents, or whatever the number was, had the opportunity to ask her those questions. So they're not going to get any new information. But there's no crime that was committed. So bringing Hope before the committee, I think, was a colossal waste of taxpayer money. The White House objected to every question that they asked her as it related to her time in the White House. The reports say that she spent 8 hours testifying, once again, incurring legal bills, wasting taxpayers' money on something where there's no crime to investigate. And really, this is when Congress should be doing their jobs. They should be there voting and passing infrastructure spending bills. They should be there making sure that people can buy health insurance across state lines and be covered with pre-existing conditions. They can make sure that we're stopping the flow of illegal immigrants into our country. So bringing Hope into Congress was the opening salvo, I'm certain of it, John, for what will continue to be the next 18 months narrative out of the Democrats in Congress, which is we have no agenda, so let's go after the people close to Donald Trump. And look, I hate to say this, and I probably shouldn't, but I fully expect to get called into a congressional hearing because I was the campaign manager, and I have nothing to share. I've already testified in front of the House on 2 separate occasions. In front of the Senate, I've testified. So all of my information is already readily available if Congress wants to go and read those transcripts that they have access to. And my guess is the same is true with Hope Hicks and everybody else who has already been in front of Congress or in front of the special counsel. There's no new information there. So I would ask Congress and Jerry Nadler and the Democrats, look, you guys want to stay in power, outline to the American people what your agenda is, and bringing people in who worked on political campaigns to ask them questions where there's no crime is not an agenda that the American people are going to support.
I don't know what they're doing because they have no agenda. They've got nothing done. But it's like the president said yesterday, they don't want to give the Trump administration any success, even if it's going to help America. They just want to help themselves get and maintain power, and that's it. And that's all they're interested in. And I think eventually, Corey, that's going to blow up in their face. John Fredericks Radio Network live in Richmond, Virginia today, the state capital of VA. And we're with Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager for the Trump for President campaign, now a very close advisor to the president, probably his number one outside advisor. Just got back from Orlando, went up and down on Air Force One with the president. Corey authored 2 best-selling books, Let Trump Be Trump, Trump's Enemies. Buy them now. Go to our website. It's right there. You can get them from your favorite bookstore, Amazon, whatever you want. Corey, let's get to another topic here, which is the fake polls. The president, according to the media, commissioning several internal polls. This is very early. They got leaked by the pollsters. The president then firing the poll companies that leaked it, which I would have done also. But a lot of question now as to what these polls were, what they mean, how fake they are. And, here, once again, we've got leakers in the around the president that just leak stuff out to harm him. But what about these polls and these leaks? What is your take on it? During the campaign, by the way, when you ran it, I just got to tell everybody this. I mean, I was there with Corey from day one. From January 2015, January 2nd, when he turned the lights on, until he departed the campaign in, I guess, July or August of 2016, there was not one leak that ever came out of his organization. Not one leak. And now we have these, we've had so many hundreds and thousands of them. Unbelievable, isn't it?
Well, it's too bad, John, because it does the president a disservice. And look, I've spent really the last 2 days with the entire campaign leadership team, Brad Parscale, Michael Glassner, who, look, I think those guys did an amazing job pulling off that campaign announcement in Orlando, Florida. I know how much work goes into it, and I know Tim Eunice and Megan Powers and all the people at the campaign who put their heart and soul to make sure that it came off perfectly, and I give them the credit for it. I'm really disappointed that someone who claims to be on the president's team, and I don't know who leaked the numbers, to be clear, but someone very close to the polling apparatus who claims to be on the president's team gave those numbers out, and they did it to harm the president. There was no value of giving those numbers out. Look, I don't think a campaign in general should ever talk about their internal polling numbers because it's not helpful. If they want to put something forward-facing and share that with the people, they can do that. But at this point, 4 years ago, your listeners should be remembered, Donald Trump was losing to Hillary Clinton 48 to 36. And he was losing to Bernie Sanders 47 to 35. And so, there is a long way to go in the campaign right now. But that being said, you don't believe the polls. John, election morning 2016, you remember it. The failing New York Times said that Donald Trump, based on the polling data, had a 1% chance, 1%
That's right.
of being the president of the United States that day. Fast forward about 20 hours, and he's the president of the United States, and all they said was, whoops, we made a mistake. These polls are designed to do one thing, to demoralize the Trump voters, to try and cause them to stay home, and to then help the Democrats say we have a good chance to encourage them, incite them, motivate them. That's what these polls are for. And the mainstream media has to always go after Donald Trump. Oh, his polling data says he's going to lose in Texas, or he's only going to win by 1 point in Texas. John, I will sit here and promise you and your listeners that is not the case. Okay, we have no fear of the state of Texas going against Donald Trump. And for that matter, I believe because of the economic success that this president has put in place, the 6 million new jobs that he's created, the 3.1% real wage growth, all the numbers, all the great things that he has done, his electoral victory in 2020 is going to be larger, and he has more opportunities that he didn't have in 2016 to play in places that weren't in play. Look, Minnesota is a real state that Donald Trump did not win in 16 but could win in 20. New Hampshire is another location. Nevada, a third. The Democrats have nowhere to expand. They really don't. And so these polls should be thrown away with the media that's reporting them. And I'm very happy that we saw swift, concise action on firing the individual or individuals who leaked this information out. And if anybody else did that too, they should also be fired. This is the difference of running a campaign and running a federal government. It's almost impossible, as you know, to fire a federal employee for leaking information. Brad made a swift, decisive, executive decision. I stand by that decision 1,000%.
I mean, you're right, because he was able to do that, and he fired everybody. Maybe some of them didn't deserve to get fired because they didn't leak it, but it didn't matter. And that was kind of the Corey Lewandowski mantra during the campaign. But I just want to get back to the fact that you ran the biggest insurgent campaign in the history of America, and you didn't have one leak, not one time. Now, you had some issues. You had to fire some people for other stuff. But how did you go 18 months without a single leak? Not one.
John, the most important thing, by and large, and what was the critical factor at the beginning stages, was making good personnel decisions. And I'm not saying I was good, maybe I was just lucky, but bringing on people like Dan Scavino and having the opportunity to work next to Keith Schiller and Hope Hicks and ultimately, Michael Glassner and George Giugikos, and the people who put their own personal agendas aside and knew that we were embarking on a war against the Republican establishment. And if we weren't unified in that war, we individually and then collectively would all be destroyed. And so we decided as a team, no leaks, nothing ever got out of the campaign. We were like a family. That's not to say there weren't internal squabbles. Of course there were. That's in every operation. But we came out better and stronger, and our one focus, our one goal, was to get Donald Trump elected president of the United States. So we put all our personal issues aside if there were any. We never did something to each other that would hurt the team or the candidate. And look, we had problems when Paul Manafort came in. He's a bad guy. We know where he is. He's sitting in the federal penitentiary right now. And we had to deal with the personalities of guys like Michael Cohen, who had ridiculous, crazy ideas. But the core team that was there, and ultimately that obviously includes his family, the president's family, they didn't leak because it doesn't serve the candidate or the president to leak. It serves people's personal agendas. And when you can get people to put their personal agenda aside, you can build something very strong and very powerful. And ultimately, that's what Donald Trump had.
And that's what you were able to do, and that's why he was the nominee and went on to that victory. Corey Lewandowski, we're out of time. I want to thank you for being on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Thank you for that insight. And the big story here, Lewandowski and I predicting Joe Biden is not going to be the nominee, and it's going to be Bernie Sanders. I've said that for 3 months. Lewandowski now on board with that. Sanders is going to be the nominee, and it's not going to be easy. This guy is tougher than he looks. and he's going to win states, and he's going to be a formidable opponent. But I don't think it's going to be Biden. Corey, I'm with you on that. Thanks for being with us, man.
Take it to Vegas,
Corey,
John.
he just got back from Air Force
Vegas.
One.
It's going to be Crazy Bernie.
Crazy Bernie, the nominee. Corey says, take it to Vegas. John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth.